Well, hello again, Andrew. Good to see you again this week.
Hello, Rachel. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. I was just reflecting on how we did last week, and I thought, all in all, for the first one, it went very well.
Nothing like patting yourself on the back, eh?
Well, nobody else does that, do they? So it's a requirement. I know there was a couple of times we talked over each other, but that's just how it's going to go with these things. It's kind of what you see is what you get.
Yes, and don't expect miracles, and you won't be disappointed.
So I think today we're going to talk about tax avoidance.
Well, this is one that you drew to my attention, I have to say. A survey that has come out asking members of the general public about their views about tax avoidance.
Mm-hmm.
And I must say, without having looked at it, if I were to do my Nostradamus approach, my prediction would be that when it comes to tax avoidance, the general public is not in favour. I could have saved them an awful lot of time and effort and money on their survey to come to the answer that we're not in favour of it. But I think the more interesting question really is, what do we mean by tax avoidance in the first place? So, Rachel, what do you mean by tax avoidance?
I guess if I was talking about it in layman's terms, it would be taking some kind of deliberate action in order to reduce my tax bill. How about that?
So, contribution to an ISA, pension payments, those would be tax avoidance, would they?
They would be under that definition, but the difference there is the government sanctions us to do that. That's legal, isn't it?
So anything that's legal doesn't qualify as tax avoidance, is that right?
That's not quite right either, though, is it? Okay, where do we get to on it then? What's the key word that I'm missing?
I think, and I hate myself for even saying this, but I think these days it's all about morality. I know.
Yes.
My fundamental belief as a long-term tax advisor is that tax has nothing to do with morality.
Agreed. I think we're as one on this subject, aren't we?
Yeah. So historically, the tax system is just a way to raise revenue for the government to allow it to run the country, and quite right too. And if you really dig into it, it seems to me that more or less any system is fairly arbitrary. Why is the top tax rate 45% rather than 44% or 46%? You know, there's no real logic to it.
It's a nice round number, though.
But it's therefore something that's quite difficult in my mind to say that it's about right or wrong when you come to the detail of why is it okay to make a pension contribution up to a certain level but not beyond that certain level. Doesn't seem that there's a moral divide there.
No.
But it does seem that that's the world we now live in, where you have to take a moral view about typically what somebody else is doing rather than what you yourself are doing.
Yeah.
And it's very obvious to people, they think, that that is tax avoidance because it's wrong, or this is perfectly legitimate tax planning, which is right. And often the dividing line, I think, comes down to the fact that if I'm doing it, it's tax planning. If you're doing it, it's tax avoidance.
And certainly that's how the papers quite often seem to portray it.
And I mean, as you know, it's a particular bugbear of mine that when you look at non-UK jurisdictions, we have this big thing about tax havens.
Yes.
And you know, the Channel Islands, dreadful tax havens, except for the fact that they're highly regulated, very professional international finance centres, and that from a UK point of view, if you have a trust in Jersey, let's say, it's massively and appropriately and sensibly taxed here.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yes.
you can't avoid tax by putting your money in Jersey, because the UK tax system is already all over it. And I wonder whether
Yes, so
your
that, well,
survey, was picking up on that sense that, oh, we all know about tax havens, whereas really we don't at all.
no, and in that particular example, the individual would have had to have taken further steps rather than just putting their money in Jersey in order to avoid tax.
And if they had just put their money in Jersey, firstly, sorry about this, Jersey. I'm only picking on you because I think Jersey is actually a really good location. But Jersey would be telling the UK that the money is there.
Because it's all reported under the Common Reporting Standard.
So HMRC would know that you've stuck your money into your Jersey bank account, your Jersey trust or whatever. And if you're not reporting it and paying your tax on it, you will be getting a knock on your door. And again, quite rightly so.
Yeah.
So I find this a very frustrating subject, I have to say.
But I mean, on the whole, the sentiment is right, though, isn't it? The government should be working to reduce tax avoidance. And of course, we know that successive governments have done that and have actually been pretty successful at doing it. It's just that each year further measures can potentially be taken to improve the take from the tax avoidance industry.
I think you're right. And actually, if we think back to when you and I were first going around giving tax advice.
What do you mean, back in the dark ages?
Back in the dark ages, before there were things like electric light, it was all about artificial tax schemes.
It was.
Whereas today, you just don't see those at all. And again, this is a good thing. It's great. HMRC have done a fantastic job at deterring people from doing that very artificial sort of planning. I worry a bit that it's an easy thing for all governments to say, we're going to crack down on tax avoidance and evasion. And it's easy to say it, but actually, I think most of that, certainly in the private client side, most of that work has already been done.
Yes.
And I don't think there are those big wins to have.
No, but an interesting subject to keep an eye on for the future.
And always one that's popular with politicians.
Yes, now let's not talk about politicians. Let's talk about something more exciting now. So what little nugget can you provide to our listeners and our viewers about something exciting to do this week?
So I wanted to recommend a series of books this week.
Okay.
The author is called Faith Hunter.
Never heard of her.
No, so she's an American writer and writes a couple of series, but the one I want to talk about is the Jane Yellowrock books.
Right.
And Jane Yellowrock, Rachel, this will be right up your street. Jane Yellowrock is a First Nations, Native American, who is what's called in Native American mythology a skinwalker, which means that using animal skins, she's able to transform into different animals, mainly into a puma in her case. And she uses this ability mainly to fight vampires. It is fantastic. Pure escapism. Actually very well written. Wonderful sense of place of Louisiana, New Orleans, amazing evocation. And it's got vampires. What more could you possibly ask? So Jane Yellowrock series, Faith Hunter. Have a go.
Okay, right. I think not. Sometimes I really enjoy your recommendations, but in this particular case, I will not be taking it. That's it for today. Join us again next week when we'll be talking about another tax subject.
Bye.
Bye for now.